So the first question is, do you think that digitization can help prevent the constant collapse of the national grid?
Absolutely. It's a no-brainer. What digitization does is that it not only enables us to gather data, but it also enables automation. So every time you digitize, right, you are on demand, right? You can manage, you can also analyze, right, the data and the information set. The problem is that today we either to the data sets that we need to be able to know what is happening in local jet that's tripped off and caused the issue
Yes.
that then led to overall collapse of the grid, right? There is no smart equipment, right? Whether it's a smart transformer or a smart recloser or what have you installed in the system that will enable or help prevent the collapse of the grid, right? But with digitization, what you have is what's known as a smart grid. And when
Okay.
your grid is smart, you are able to see what's happening, especially in a country as huge and as diverse as Nigeria. You're able to see what's happening, whether it's in Ogun State or in the north or in the southwest or even in the south or what have you. And the
Even
beauty
ahead
of
of time, and be
absolutely,
able to stop it.
absolutely. And so what AI does is that AI is a lot of machine learning. So the more the machine gathers the data, the more it learns and the smarter it gets. And then it's like when you use your phone, for instance, right? When you first started using it, you probably couldn't recognize the Nigerian names and words that you're telling it to call.
Yes.
But the more you used it, the fact now it's able to call it without any problems or what
Exactly.
have you. That's pretty much what the system then would be able to do, right? It will not, and then the algorithms, right, will be able to on demand, right, be able to, at least like I said, predictive analysis,
Yes.
right, and it will be able to give up warnings or what have you to be able to know that there's about to be a fault or
Yes.
there is a fault or what have you. And then the beauty of it also is that it will also be able to localize the fault as opposed to the entire grid collapsing, right? So that way it's just an area, right, that is collapsed, that is shut down, right, or that the system collapses as opposed to the entire grid collapsing. And I just wanted to add this as well. So digitization has actually been in progress. We've been digitizing. So
Okay.
at the distribution, point, meaning at the utility point, many of the utilities have SCADA systems, right? They also have systems from our company, which are what's known as automatic meter infrastructure, right? That allows them to be able to see at the metering points, right? So remember that smart grid is everybody combined. It's
Yes.
generation, transmission, distribution, right? Now, there's digitization and automation at different points of the grid. The issue is that we need to combine it so that way it prevents the entire grid, right, from collapsing. But today also, right, there are so I probably want to call it micro levels of digitization. So meaning there's digitization at the point of the distribution company, so the utilities. So for instance, if for example a utility has 500,000 customers, for example, those 500,000 customers, right, are connected to an automatic meter infrastructure.
Okay.
Our meters have been smart for the past 10 years. I repeat, for the past 10 years, we've been installing smart meters. So that means data is being gathered from those meters. We're able to see what the demand, the consumption pattern, as well as, theft, whether or not people are tampering with the
Yes, 'cause
tampering
that's
with
the
the
biggest issue that people are
absolutely,
facing.
absolutely. Well, there's actually a bigger issue. It's called bypass. People are
Yeah,
now
that one is
people
bigger
have
than
now
tampering.
thank you.
I
People have
agree.
now figured out, that tampering with the meter, if you mess with it, the meter is smart enough and it will
Yes.
shut off.
Yes.
And then now you're faced with a fine and a
But
penalty.
that's just for the smart meters.
Exactly. But there's at least a proliferation of at least I know that over 3 million or more meters that Mojek has injected into the system, which is about 50-60% of what has been installed in Nigeria today, have been smart. And Mojek has installed,
So just to
the number of meters.
advocate more about it, so that people will subscribe more to the smart meters and
Absolutely. I mean, so the beauty of smart metering is that a smart meter enables you to be billed for what you've actually, in other words, you are billed for what you consume as opposed to billed for what you have not consumed.
consumed. You
Because
can
what
turn it
estimated
on, you can
billing,
turn it off, you can
absolutely.
control
Well, no,
the
you can't.
usage.
No, you cannot. So
Okay.
it also technically doesn't belong to you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that technically doesn't belong to you in the sense that I tell people to consider a meter as POS.
Okay.
It's a POS. Except the only thing about this particular POS is that it communicates with you, right? And it also communicates with the owner of the device. The owner of the device, technically speaking, is the utility. Because what it needs to be able to do is be able to know how much you consumed and therefore properly bill you for what you consume, as opposed to sending you an estimated bill, and then you begin to cuss everybody under the sun that how dare you? I wasn't even
That's how it
home. I
used to
never
be.
exactly, So the reason why a smart meter is your friend as an end user is that the smart meter also you can say, excuse me, sorry, can you see that I wasn't home this entire month
Yes,
or the
yes.
past 2-3 months, and therefore you won't get charged, as opposed to what happened before, or better still, it also tells you the units that you consumed, so that way you can also calculate with the tariff what your bill should be, right? So it keeps everybody honest, exactly,
And
accountable,
transparency,
exactly, and
there's a lot of
transparent
transparency.
with it. And so people should not see a smart meter as their enemy. It's actually your friend. And if you don't have one, go subscribe to one very quickly. Mojek has the best smart meters in the country, and not just in the country, in Africa, period. But there are many other providers, so I would actually be doing a disservice. There are several other providers such as Prodigy and Gospel, and just so many, other providers of smart meters in the country as a whole, right? There's at least maybe 30 or 40, right? Providers of smart meters. And technically speaking, the truth is nobody should, be without a smart meter.
Okay, thank you. And the final question is, so how can green energy help us reduce cost of electricity?
The cost of electricity.
Yes.
Okay. It is completely criminal as a country that has abundant supply of sun or has solar energy and that we do not use the solar energy. Countries where they only get few hours during the winter and during autumn, right? They only get few hours of the sun, are utilizing the power of the sun. How much more in Nigeria, where you have, I probably say 365 days,
Yes.
right? Except for maybe in the rainy season, which, as you know, it doesn't rain all day. It
Yes.
rains part of the day and then the sun comes out. So you have abundant provision of the sun. Why won't we use that? It costs us nothing. So we don't, that's the one fuel that you don't have to pay for. I mean, maybe until we start using air or something else to generate electricity, but for now, it's free, right? So without a doubt. Now, how can it help us? Today, when you generate utility scale solar farms, right? So yeah, utility scale, I mean megawatts worth of solar farm sizes, right? The unit cost of energy, right, is actually the cheapest. So when you look at the levelized cost of energy as well as the parity compared to gas and other energy sources, solar is actually the cheapest if the plant was just solar alone. But when you then introduce batteries or what have you, then of course,
Yes,
the
the
cost,
panel, yes.
exactly, the cost goes a lot higher. And what the battery does is just simple storage. But and that's why the batteries are used. But in terms of the panels, right? In other words, if you generate and consume as you are generating, it's actually the cheapest. So it's a no-brainer that it, without a doubt, should be able to help us reduce our energy costs. However, solar by itself, because again, it's the source of its energy is not. We don't have 24-hour sunlight.
Yes, I was going
Right?
to go
Exactly. We don't have 24-hour sunlight, and so because of that, we absolutely must use other sources of energy to generate power in at night and things like that, right? And not just that, it also is not. It doesn't. It confuses the grid at times, right? And it doesn't help the grid stabilize. So when people say you can't use it for base load, what that means is that for heavy load that
Yes.
you need, solar is also not very good at doing that for us. So what solar is very good at doing, however, right, is like I said, when you were asking me, for example, a lot of people complain that solar doesn't carry their ACs and their
Yes.
high equipment. That's not true. It's a matter of, like I said before, if you were just using your rooftop alone to generate, the size of your rooftop is a limitation. If your rooftop was bigger, then
Oh,
of
I
course it will
see.
carry. It will be able
Yes.
to
So the
power
more
everything.
panel you have generates more
Absolutely,
energy.
absolutely.
And
So
then,
if you cover your entire roof with solar, then of course you'll be able to carry everything. I mean, that's on the one hand. The other hand is batteries, 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 batteries. So even if all you have is maybe 5 kilowatts worth of what's known as 5 kVA is what you're generating with your solar panels. On the battery side, you can have storage as much as 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever you want. What does that mean? What that means is that today I can use my generation from solar. If there is light, as you guys like to
yes.
call it, if there's grid supply, the grid can charge my battery. It's just like think of your power bank, right?
Yes, yes.
If the bigger your power bank, right, the more devices and the longer it will last for you to be able to use it. It's the exact same
Exactly.
thing. So the bigger your storage, the more devices, the more things, and the longer it will be able to power those equipments for, right? But the smaller the storage, the smaller, the less that you use,
Yes.
the
It
less
can last.
useful it is for you. And it would help with, again, the reduction of CO2 emission. We're all polluting not just our environment, our lives, ourselves. Where everyone is, I mean, the soot that comes out of those generator sets or what have you, right? Most people, in fact, some people don't know anything than the smell of generator and the sound of diesel,
Yes.
and the smell of diesel rather than the sound of generators in their homes, right? But what solar does is that
Clean
it
energy.
exactly, it's clean energy, but it also helps us reduce again, this energy poverty and gives us a lower cost of, energy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.